I knew three things the night John Hajun walked into my life. 1. He was an alpha. Not the kind you read about in those ridiculous romance novels where the alpha smells like pine trees and safety and everything your mother warned you about. In the best possible way. No, John Hajun smelled like gunpowder, cold steel, and something underneath it so dangerously compelling that my suppressants nearly gave up on the spot out of pure respect. 2. He was bleeding. Not a little, a lot. The kind of bleeding that normal people go to hospitals for, except this man had clearly decided that hospitals were for people who hadn't already frightened every medical professional in Seoul into early retirement. 3. He was standing in my apartment. My apartment. 4th floor. Dead-bolted door. Security chain. The apartment I'd paid 3 months deposit on, specifically because the landlord assured me it was the most secure building in the district, which was now officially the funniest thing anyone had ever said to me. I was standing in my kitchen holding a pot of ramyeon I just made, wearing pajama pants with little clouds on them, staring at 6 feet 2 inches of bloodied, terrifying alpha who had apparently let himself in through my window like the concept of personal boundaries was something that happened to other people. You're bleeding on my floor, I said. He looked down, back up. So I am. That's all you have to say. Do you have a first aid kit? His voice was low, controlled, the voice of someone who had learned to keep everything locked behind several layers of deliberate calm. His eyes were dark, sharp, scanning my apartment with the efficiency of someone cataloging exits and threats simultaneously. Why would I help you? I set the ramyeon down before I dropped it. I don't know you. You broke into my home. You're bleeding on my floor, which is rented, and the deposit was not cheap. SEO Jibu, he said. I stopped. He knew my name. How do you know my name? I said very carefully. Your mailbox, he said. Downstairs. I stared at him. You read my mailbox while bleeding out. I was thorough. He took one step forward and his leg buckled, just slightly, almost imperceptibly, but I caught it because I was watching him the way you watch something that might explode. Carefully from what you hope is a safe distance. He caught himself on my counter. His jaw tightened. He said nothing, just looked at me with those dark, controlled eyes and waited like he was fully prepared to bleed quietly on my kitchen floor all night rather than ask for help twice. I was a beta, that was what my forged documents said. Had said for 4 years. Seojibu, 24, beta. Completely unremarkable, nothing to see here. Certainly not a registered Omega who had faked his designation after his alpha ex-fiancé sold his scent profile to a trafficking ring and disappeared with the deposit on their apartment. I'd been surviving on suppressants, fake papers, and sheer stubbornness ever since. I should have told this man to get out. I should have called the police. Except the police in this district had a complicated relationship with John Hajun that I didn't fully understand yet but would come to understand completely in the following weeks. Instead, I put down my ramyeon, opened the cabinet under the sink, and pulled out the first aid kit. Sit, I said. He sat, immediately, like the word was an instruction. His body recognized before his pride could object. I cleaned the wound. It was a graze, deep, ugly, the kind a bullet leaves when it's in a hurry. My hands were steady. I'd learned steady a long time ago. Steady kept you invisible. Invisible kept you safe. He watched me work with an expression I couldn't read. You're not afraid, he said. I'm furious, I corrected. They're different. Something shifted in his eyes. Most people, he said quietly, can't tell the difference. Most people, I replied, haven't had reasons to learn. I pressed the bandage down firmly. He didn't flinch. I looked up and found him, already looking at me with an expression that made my suppressants work considerably harder than usual. His nostrils flared, almost imperceptibly. My blood ran cold. He could smell something. Not everything. The suppressants were still holding, but something. The edges of something I'd spent 4 years burying. Thank you, he said, carefully, like he was filing something away. He stood, straightened his ruined jacket, and walked back to my window with the unhurried certainty of a man who went exactly where he chose and left exactly when he decided. At the window he paused. Lock this after me, he said. You came through it. I know, he said, and something in his voice dropped to a frequency that bypassed my brain entirely and went straight to somewhere more instinctive. Lock it anyway. There are people in this city who are less polite than I am. Then he was gone. I stood in my kitchen in my cloud pajama pants, next to my cold ramyeon and my bloody floor, and understood with absolute clarity that my quiet invisible life had just ended. I locked the window. It didn't help. He came back the next night, and the night after that, not bleeding, Not climbing through windows, just there. A black car parked across the street from my building that was there when I left for work and there when I came home. A shadow that moved differently from other shadows. The particular stillness of someone watching without needing to be seen. On the fourth night, I opened my window and said into the dark, "I can see you." A pause. "I know," came the reply from somewhere. Below, calm, unbothered, like being caught surveilling someone's apartment was just a Tuesday. "This is called stalking," I said. "This is called protection." "I didn't ask for protection." "No," he said. "You didn't." He didn't elaborate, didn't explain, didn't move the car. I closed the window. The car was there in the morning. And I want to be clear about something. I did not fall for John Ha-jun, because he was devastatingly dangerous and aggressively present and smelled like something my suppressants were increasingly failing to pretend didn't exist. I am a sarcastic, self-sufficient, extremely sensible person who had survived 4 years alone through careful planning and zero romanticism whatsoever. What happened was significantly more embarrassing than falling. What happened was Tuesday the 3rd week when I slipped on the wet pavement outside my building, in the rain carrying 3 bags of groceries. And before I could even process the falling part, I was not falling anymore because he was simply there, one arm around my waist, groceries in his other hand, like he'd moved faster than physics should have allowed. We stood in the rain, his arm around me, my heart doing something unforgivable. "I had it," I said. "You were falling. I was recovering. You were horizontal. I stopped. He was looking at me from extremely close proximity, with rain on his face and those dark, controlled eyes that were doing the thing where something underneath them moved even when everything on the surface stayed still. "Give me my groceries," I said. He carried them upstairs. I let him. I made tea because my hands needed something to do, and he sat at my kitchen table. My kitchen, like he'd always had a chair there, and watched me move around the small space with that quiet cataloging attention of his. "You're going to tell me who you're protecting me from," I said. "Eventually. When it's necessary," he said. "It's necessary now." He looked at me. "There are people who move through this city collecting things that don't belong to them." His voice was flat, precise. "Omegas, whose suppressants are starting to fail, whose scent bleeds through in ways they don't always notice." The cup in my hand became very still. "I'm a beta," I said. His eyes held mine, patient, certain. "Jiwoo. Just my name, just that." But the way he said it, low, careful, like something he'd decided to treat gently, cracked right through 4 years of careful architecture. "How long have you known?" I whispered. "The first night," he said. "When you pressed the bandage down. Your scent broke through for just a moment." He paused. "Gardenia and something warmer underneath. I've never—" He stopped. Something moved across his face. "I've never encountered a scent like it." My throat tightened. "You didn't say anything." It wasn't mine to say. I sat down across from him. My legs had made another unilateral decision. "The people you're talking about, they're looking for me specifically. They have your old scent profile," he said quietly. "From 4 years ago, someone sold it. Kim Dae-hyun, my ex-fiancé, of course." "I know," I said. "I know who sold it." Something happened to Ha-jun's face then. Something swift and dark and briefly terrifying. Gone in a second, but I caught it. "He's been handled," Ha-jun said. I stared at him. "What does that mean?" "It means he won't be a problem." "John Ha-jun, what does that mean?" He met my eyes steadily. "He's alive," he said. "Uncomfortable, but alive." A pause. I was restrained. I didn't know whether to be horrified or, and this is the embarrassing part, relieved. 4 years of looking over my shoulder. 4 years of suppressants and forged papers and the specific exhaustion of surviving someone else's betrayal. Handled. I pressed my lips together very hard. "Don't," Ha-jun said softly. "Don't thank me for it." I wasn't going to. Your eyes were. I looked away. At the wall. At the window he'd climbed through 3 weeks ago and changed everything without asking permission. Outside, Seoul moved and glittered and went about its business entirely indifferent to the fact that my life was rearranging itself again for the second time. We stayed like that for a long time. Him at my table, me looking at the wall, the tea going cold between us. "Why?" I said finally. "You don't know me. You didn't know me 3 weeks ago. You broke into my apartment and bled on my floor, and now you're sitting in my kitchen telling me you've had my ex-fiancé, what, dealt with, and you're protecting me from trafficking rings, and I don't—" My voice went slightly unsteady, just slightly. "I don't understand why." He was quiet for a long moment. "Because the first night," he said slowly. You looked at me bleeding on your kitchen floor and you were furious instead of afraid. His eyes came to mine. Do you know how long it's been since someone looked at me and felt something other than fear? The room was very still. That's not a good enough reason, I said softly. No, he agreed. It's not. He looked at his hands on the table. Large hands. Careful hands, I now knew, when they needed to be. But it's the honest one. I should have sent him home. I should have maintained the careful, invisible life I'd constructed so precisely. Instead, I got up, poured the cold tea away, made fresh, and put his cup back in front of him without a word. He wrapped both hands around it. We didn't speak again for an hour. It was the most honest hour I'd had in 4 years. 3 months later, I was standing in my bathroom at 6:17 a.m., staring at a small plastic stick that was delivering information I had not requested and was not prepared for, and which explained with devastating clarity why my suppressants had stopped working properly for the past 6 weeks. The test had 2 lines, 2 very clear, very certain, very life-altering lines. I sat down on the bathroom floor. Outside my apartment door, in the hallway, I could hear the specific quality of stillness that meant Hajun was there. He'd started staying. Not every night, but enough nights that my apartment had quietly accumulated evidence of him. A jacket on the hook by the door, a second toothbrush, coffee he preferred on the counter next to mine. We hadn't named what we were. We hadn't needed to. But this had a name. This had several names. This had implications that stretched far beyond 2 people who hadn't named what they were to each other. Because John Hajun wasn't just a dangerous alpha who had climbed through my window and rearranged my life. John Hajun was the head of the most powerful criminal organization in Seoul. He had enemies the way most people had. Furniture, everywhere. Accumulated over years, impossible to get rid of all at once. And I was carrying his pup. I looked at the test for a long time. Then I did something I was not proud of but fully understood given the circumstances. I put the test in my pocket, got dressed, made coffee, handed Hajun his cup when he came through the door with that quiet morning energy of his, smiled like everything was fine. He looked at me for a long moment. His nostrils flared, just once. Something moved through his eyes, deep, searching. You okay? He asked. Fine, I said. Calder Wren would have been proud of my delivery. Hajun said nothing, but for the rest of the morning he stayed closer than usual, his hand finding the small of my back, his eyes following me across every room. Like his instincts already knew something. His mind was waiting for permission to understand. I had 4 weeks before the scent change became undeniable. 4 weeks to figure out how to tell the most dangerous man in Seoul that I was carrying his air. No problem. Completely fine. I was absolutely not fine. I made it 11 days. Not 4 weeks. 11 days. Which is frankly impressive given that John Hajun had the observational capacity of someone who had survived decades in the most dangerous criminal underworld in Seoul by noticing everything before it became a problem. I was the problem. I was noticing myself noticing things. Food smells that hadn't bothered me before suddenly sending me sideways. The specific exhaustion that settled into my bones. By 2 in the afternoon. Like a second skeleton made entirely of concrete. The way my suppressants had stopped pretending. Entirely, and my scent had shifted into something that no amount of neutralizing spray was convincingly covering anymore. I knew. Hajun knew. We were both pretending neither of us knew. And the performance was becoming genuinely exhausting. On the 11th day, I came home to find him standing in the kitchen. Not doing anything. Not making coffee or reading or doing any of the quiet things he did when he was in my space. Just standing, facing the window. His hands at his sides. His shoulders carrying a particular tension. I had learned to read the way sailors read weather. Something had happened. Hajun, I said carefully. He turned around. His eyes went straight to my midsection. Not my face. Not a scan of the room. Straight there, like his instincts, had already filed the report and his mind was just catching up with the conclusion. The silence lasted approximately 4 seconds. They were the longest 4 seconds of my life. How long? He said. His voice was controlled. Carefully, deliberately controlled. In the way that meant the thing. Underneath it was the opposite of controlled. I put my bag down slowly. 11 days. You've known for 11 days. Yes. And you said nothing. I stopped. I was figuring out how to tell you. 11 days, Jiwoo. Something cracked through the controlled surface. Just slightly, just enough. 11 days of me watching you carry this alone and pretending I wasn't watching and you. Pretending I wasn't watching and he stopped himself. His jaw tightened so hard I could see the muscle jump. Why didn't you tell me? Because you're terrifying, I said honestly. And I didn't know what you would. Terrifying. He said it like the word had struck him somewhere specific. You run a criminal organization, Ha-jun. You have enemies in 6 districts. You had my ex-fiancé handled in ways I've chosen not to think about too hard. I held his gaze. I found out I was carrying your pup, and my first thought was that it put a target on both of us, and I didn't know if you'd— My voice went briefly unsteady. I didn't know what you'd want. The room went very quiet. He crossed it in 4 steps, stopped directly in front of me. His hands came up slowly and cupped my face with the particular careful tenderness that still startled me every time because it was so completely at odds with every other thing he was in every other room. Look at me, he said softly. I looked at him. I want this, he said, simply, completely, like it required no deliberation. I want you. I want our pup. I want— Something moved through his eyes, deep and unguarded in the way he only allowed in rooms with just the 2 of us. I have spent my entire life building things that don't belong to anyone. Things that exist because of fear and leverage and calculated violence. His thumbs brushed my cheekbones. This is the first thing I want that's just mine. Ours. His voice dropped lower. Do you understand me? My throat was extremely tight. You're not allowed to make me cry, I said. I have a reputation. Something in his face broke open, completely into the smile that only existed in private, rare and devastating and entirely mine. He pressed his forehead to mine. A pup, he said quietly, like he was holding the word carefully, learning the weight of it. Apparently, I said. Surprise. He laughed, low and brief and real. His arms came around me and I let them, and we stood in my small kitchen. That had somehow become our small kitchen, and for approximately 4 minutes, everything was the kind of quiet that felt like safety. Then his phone rang. The specific ringtone meant Shin Boyong, his second in command, the only person who called that line. Ha-jun answered immediately, listened for exactly 12 seconds. His face went through several things very quickly and landed somewhere that made my blood go cold. He hung up. Ji-woo, he said. His voice was different now, back to the controlled surface. But underneath it, something was moving that I had never heard before. Something older and darker and more animal than anything he'd shown me in 3 months. I need you to pack a bag. What's happening? Park Sang-chul knows where you are. The name landed like ice water. Park Sang-chul, head of the Eastern Trafficking Network. The man who had bought my scent profile from Daehyun 4 years ago. The man Ha-jun had been quietly, systematically dismantling for 3 months, which I now understood was not coincidentally the same 3 months he'd spent watching my building. From a black car. He found the clinic records, Ha-jun said. He was moving already, checking the window, his phone back at his ear issuing quiet, rapid instructions that I couldn't follow because they were in the specific coded language his organization used. Your suppressant prescriptions. They traced back to this address 2 hours ago. 2 hours, I said. Ha-jun, that means they're already in the district. Yes. My hand went instinctively to my abdomen. He saw it, his eyes tracked the movement, and something happened to his face that I had no existing framework for. Something that went beyond anger or fear, or any of the recognizable human emotions, and into something more fundamental, more animal, more alpha. His scent changed. I had been around alphas my whole life. Suppressants or not, I knew what alpha scent was. I knew the difference between a dominant alpha's everyday presence and what happened when something they considered theirs was threatened. I had never been in the room with an alpha going feral. I was in the room with one now. It happened slowly then, all at once. The controlled surface didn't crack. It dissolved. His pupils dilated. His breathing shifted, deepening, steadying into something rhythmic and deliberate, like a predator settling into stillness before movement. His scent flooded the apartment, gunpowder and cold steel, and underneath it something so primally alpha that my omega instincts, suppressed for 4 years, rose up to meet it like they'd been waiting. Ha-jun. I kept my voice steady. Stay with me. Look at me. His eyes found mine. Pack the bag, he said, very quietly. Now. I'm not leaving without you. Ji-woo. I am not leaving without you. I walked toward him. Stopped close. Put my hand flat on his chest where his heart was doing something loud and rapid, beneath the calm exterior. You come back to me. Whatever you're about to do, you come back. His hand covered mine against his chest. I have 12 men on the building, he said. Boyoung is outside. She takes you to the safe house. I'll be there by morning. Promise me. His jaw tightened. I don't make promises, he said. You know that. Make this one. A long moment, his eyes searched mine with that dark, searching look that always felt like he was reading something written underneath the surface of everything I showed the world. I'll come back. he said, quietly. Absolutely. He kissed my forehead, long and deliberate and warm. Then he pulled away and walked to the door and became in the space of 3 steps the thing that made 6 districts afraid of his name. He paused at the door. Jiwoo? Yes. If anything happens, he stopped. Started again. The pup has my name regardless. I've already arranged it. His voice was completely even. They'll never go without, either of you. My throat closed entirely. The door shut. Outside I heard his voice, low and commanding, issuing instructions that ended with 3 words I caught clearly above the rest. Leave none standing. I packed my bag with shaking hands. Shin Bo-young was at my door in 4 minutes. Small, sharp-eyed, terrifyingly competent. She looked at my face and said nothing except, he'll be fine. He's never not been fine. He went feral, I said. She looked at me steadily. I've worked for Jeon Ha-jun for 7 years, she said. I have never seen him go feral. She paused. Until tonight. Another pause. You should know what that means. I knew what it meant. I got in the car. The safe house was 40 minutes outside. Seoul. I sat in the back seat with my bag on my lap and my hand on my abdomen and watched the city lights dissolve into dark, and told my pup quietly, in the privacy of my own head, that their father was going to be fine, because the alternative was not something I was willing to consider. Not now, not ever. Morning came slowly. The safe house was somewhere in the hills outside Seoul, a place that looked from the outside like an ordinary countryside home and was from the inside something considerably more fortified than that. Reinforced doors, covered windows, the quiet hum of security systems that Bo-young moved through with the ease of someone who had memorized every corner. She made tea without asking. I sat at the kitchen table and didn't drink it. The clock on the wall said 4:17 a.m., then 5, then 5:43. The sky outside the covered window shifted from black to the particular gray that comes before dawn, like the world clearing its throat. Before saying something difficult, Bo-young sat across from me. She didn't offer comfort, didn't fill the silence with reassurances she couldn't guarantee. She just sat, sharp-eyed and steady, drinking her tea, present in the specific way of someone who understood that sometimes being there was the only honest thing you could offer. I respected her enormously for it. Tell me about him, I said. Around 5 a.m., when the silence had become something I needed to fill, or it would fill me instead. She looked at me over her cup. What do you want to know? Anything, I said. Everything. Something true. She was quiet for a moment, considering. When I met him, she said finally, he was 22. I was 20. He'd just taken over from his father who was... She paused, choosing words carefully, not someone who should have been in charge of anything. Ha-jun dismantled everything his father built and rebuilt it on different rules. She set her cup down. People think what he does makes him monstrous. But there are rules, lines he doesn't cross, has never crossed. Her eyes held mine. Omegas, children, anyone who can't protect themselves. He's never... She stopped. In 7 years I have never once seen him direct violence towards someone who didn't choose the life that brought it to them. I thought about my scent profile, about what he'd spent 3 months doing to the network that held it. He was already dismantling Sangchul's operation before he found me, I said slowly. Wasn't he? Bo-young looked at me steadily, said nothing. How long? I said. 8 months, she said quietly. He'd been building the case for 8 months before you. A pause. But the timeline accelerated considerably after. 8 months of work, redirected, sharpened, aimed at a specific target because of a scent profile belonging to someone he hadn't met yet. He didn't tell me, I said. He doesn't tell people things that would make them feel like a debt, she said simply. He has a particular horror of being owed gratitude. Finds it, she almost smiled, uncomfortable. That was so completely Ha-jun that something in my chest ached with the specific pain of knowing someone well enough for their most private qualities to hurt you. The gate alarm sounded at 6:22 a.m. Bo-young was on her feet before the second tone, phone at her ear. 3 seconds of listening, then her shoulders dropped exactly 1 centimeter, which I had come to understand was the Shin Bo-young equivalent of visible relief. He's at the gate, she said. I was at the door before she finished the sentence. He looked terrible. I want to say he looked fine because that would be the narratively cleaner version of events, but the truth was Jeon Ha-jun, at 6:23 in the morning, standing at the door of the safe house, looked like a man who had spent the night doing something that had cost him considerably. His jacket was gone, his shirt was torn at the shoulder. There was a cut above his left eyebrow that had been roughly dealt with and a bruise forming along his jaw that hadn't been there the night before. He was alive. He was standing. His eyes found me immediately, and everything else about his face, the exhaustion, the controlled aftermath of whatever the night had been, simplified into something so direct and unguarded that I forgot for a moment how to be sarcastic about anything. "You're hurt," I said. "I'm fine. You have a cut above your eye. It's minor." "Ha-jun Jiwoo." He crossed the threshold, stopped in front of me. His hands came up to my face the same way they always did, careful and certain, his thumbs tracing my cheekbones, like he was verifying something his instincts had been waiting to confirm all night. "Are you okay?" "I've been sitting at a kitchen table for 6 hours," I said. "You went feral and spent the night dismantling a trafficking network. Which one of us should be asking the other that question?" Something in his eyes softened. "You," he said quietly. "Always you." I pulled him inside. Boyoung made herself extremely scarce with the professionalism of someone who understood exactly when a room needed fewer people in it. I sat Hajun down at the kitchen table, the same chair I'd occupied all night, and cleaned the cut above. His eye, with hands that I was proud to note, stayed completely steady. He watched me work. "Sangchul," I said, not a question. "Handled," he said. "Permanently this time." "Permanently," he confirmed. "And the network." Boyoung's team has the remaining members in custody. Enough evidence to keep them occupied in legal proceedings for the rest of their natural lives. His eyes tracked mine. "Your file, the scent profile, everything Daehyun sold, it's gone. Every copy, every record." He paused. "You're not in any system that can be used against you." "Not anymore." I pressed the bandage above his eye carefully. 4 years. 4 years of suppressants and forged papers and looking over my shoulder and sleeping light and never fully exhaling. Gone. In one night. Because of him. "I told you not to make me cry," I said. My voice came out considerably less steady than I intended. I didn't say anything that warranted crying. "Hajun." "I'm serious," I simply stated. "You destroyed an entire criminal network," I said. "For me, before you even knew me." He was quiet. "Not just for you," he said finally, low and honest. "For everyone whose file was in that system. But..." His jaw tightened slightly. "Yours was the one that made it personal." I set the first aid kit down, sat across from him at the table, looked at him properly in the early morning, light coming gray and quiet, through the covered window, at the cut I'd just bandaged, and the bruise forming on his jaw and the exhaustion he was carrying with the same controlled composure he carried everything. "I need to ask you something," I said. "Ask." "What are we doing?" I held his gaze steadily. "Not the pup. Not the network. Not the logistics of any of it." I searched his face. "What are we doing, Hajun? You and me. What is this?" He looked at me for a long moment. Then he reached across the table and took my hand, turned it over. His thumb traced a slow line across my palm, like he was reading something written there. "I have spent my entire adult life," he said quietly, "making certain that nothing and no one could be used against me. No attachments, no vulnerabilities, no one close enough to become a target." His eyes came up to mine. "And then you pressed a bandage against my side in cloud pajama pants and told me you were furious instead of afraid and He stopped. Something moved through his face, open and unguarded and completely undefended. I stopped being careful. "That's terrifying," I said softly. "Yes," he agreed. "It is. You could have walked away. Any point in the last 3 months you could have..." "No," he said simply. "I couldn't." The gray morning light sat between us, warm and quiet. "I'm not easy," I said. "I'm sarcastic and I have trust issues and I'll fight. You want everything and I don't respond well to being managed or handled or..." "I know," he said. "And you have enemies in 6 OE districts and a job description. That gives me anxiety and you go feral. Apparently, which is..." "I know." "Hajun Jiwoo." His hand tightened around mine. "I know." His eyes held mine absolutely steady. "I'm asking anyway." The kitchen was very quiet. Outside, Seoul was waking up, distant and indifferent, going about the business of a new day, entirely unaware that in a safe house in the hills, a man who made 6 districts afraid of his name was sitting at a kitchen table holding the hand of a sarcastic Omega in a borrowed sweater, waiting for an answer like it was the only thing that mattered. Because it was. "Our pup," I said slowly, "is going to be an absolute handful." Something blazed through his eyes. "Yes," he said, the word coming out rough around the edges, like it meant considerably more than one syllable. "They'll have your face probably," I said, "which is unfair to everyone around them." "And your mouth," he said, "which is unfair to me specifically." I laughed, broken and real and slightly wet around the edges because apparently I was crying now, quietly, which I was choosing to blame entirely on hormones and proximity and the specific Devastation of being known completely by someone, and having them stay anyway. He stood, came around the table, crouched in front of my chair the way he had in the grocery store aisle. No, that was someone else's story. He crouched in front of me the way he had in my kitchen the very first night, making himself level with me, refusing the height advantage, choosing equal ground. His hands framed my face. Stay, he said. Not a command, not with the authority of an alpha, who had spent his life having his instructions, followed without question. Just a man, just him, asking. Not because of the pup, not because of what I can offer or protect or provide. His thumbs caught the tears I was pretending weren't happening. Stay because this is the only place I've wanted to come back to. In my entire life, this is the only... He stopped. His forehead dropped to mine. You are the only thing I have ever been afraid to lose. The most dangerous man in Seoul. Afraid of losing me. I put my hands over his. You came back, I said softly. I told you I would. You said you don't make promises. I made that one, he said. I'll keep making it. Every time. As many times as you need. I looked at him. At the bandage above. His eye and the bruise on his jaw and the exhaustion he'd been carrying. All night, and the eyes that were looking at me like I was the only fixed point in a world he'd spent decades navigating. By being afraid of nothing. Okay, I said. He went very still. Okay. Don't make it weird, I said. It's okay. We're doing this. All of it. The pup and the enemies in 6 districts and the feral alpha episodes, and... He kissed me. Not soft this time. Not careful. Full and certain and slightly desperate in the way of someone who had spent a night not knowing and was now resolving that not knowing into something solid, something real, something that could be held. I held it. When he pulled back, his forehead stayed against mine. Our pup, he said quietly, like he was learning the shape of it, like it was something he was going to carry carefully for the rest of his life. Our pup, I confirmed. Boyoung knocked on the kitchen door frame. Approximately 30 seconds later, with the energy of someone who had been waiting a professional distance away and had decided enough was enough. Congratulations, she said dryly. Now can we please discuss the 17 logistical items that require immediate attention before noon? Ha-jun looked at her. Give us a minute, Boyoung, he said. You've had 6 minutes. One more. She looked at the ceiling, walked away. We heard her in the next room, pointedly making tea and being extremely loud about it. Ha-jun looked at me. I looked at him. She's going to be the most terrifying godmother in Seoul, I said. He laughed. Fully. The rare kind that reached everything. Undoubtedly, he said. He stood, pulled me gently to my feet, and kept my hand in his with the simple certainty of someone who had decided and was not revisiting the decision. We walked into whatever came next together, which turned out to be 17 logistical items before noon, a very opinionated second in command, and the slow quiet work of building something real inside a life that had never been built for softness. Our pup arrived 7 months later. Loud, furious, absolutely perfect. They had his face. And my mouth. He was undone from the first second, completely, irreversibly. It was the most dangerous I had ever seen John Ha-jun, and the most safe I had ever felt in my life.